Howdy, folks. Welcome to episode 1 of the ReasonRx Podcast with
Melanie
in Minnesota and
and
Michael
Michael.
in Texas. Yes, our first podcast ever, so enjoy the glitches and everything. All right, so in this podcast, we're going to discuss everything education from a rational point of view, so it's for everybody. Because all kids need an education, and we need to continue it when we get older. Melanie, did you have a really good education when you were younger? Did you learn everything you needed and get everything about logic and everything that you need for adult life?
No, not at all. It was not even close.
Me either.
It's lacking, sorely lacking.
So I had to learn a lot after high school and college. Just like, I forgot who the guy is. Politician, France, early 1900s, said everything I learned after I was 30. So what about you? Did you have you been learning a lot since high school and college?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, and that was, just because I realized the lack of it. I didn't know at the time when I was growing up, but once I got out of school, I realized I don't know really anything. It was pretty sad.
Yeah.
So yeah. It's like a daily effort, for sure.
So this podcast is for everybody who's like that. Students, teachers, parents, administrators, people even in their 50s, 80s who want to think better and live better for themselves or their kids or their friends and family. And then we're going to discuss, like, Melanie and I will have episodes where we'll talk about issues or topics, and then we'll interview guests. And we'll talk about, of course, things in education like logic, making mistakes, epistemology, academic subjects like biology and physics and earth science and art and piano and music theory and the nature of art and the role of art in everyday life and the importance of math, and then everything that comes into play in education and making yourself a good thinker and a good liver. Not like liver in the body, like kidney, like someone who lives, of course. But like, we don't want people to be livers. Be rational animals, please. But nutrition, exercise, sleep, all that comes into play. They're part of biology for one thing, but we need to have them down to learn well and remember and think and live well. Because as we say in our description, we got to talk about everything involved in education and needed for an optimally functioning person. Anything else you want to add, Melanie?
You said it so well. I mean,
because I got to read what we wrote down earlier, so.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, you're also a good reader. Yeah, there's that. Yeah. I mean, honestly, learning and then how to learn. Some people need to kind of examine that a bit too. Not just try to absorb, but understand how you're getting it. So.
Yeah. Everyone needs to get better at that. Not just the content of learning, but know how we learn, how to know when we have knowledge and not just memorization. And we'll go over what understanding really is, what knowledge really is, what understanding is, how to think and apply knowledge in all these different areas. Because, that comes up a lot for everyone. When you're in education or you're a teacher or you're a person, when people talk about learning styles, is that right or wrong, and to what extent? And when they talk about a good diet or exercise and all these claims made in medicine and science, how do we decide? Right? But it takes good habits of mind and logic and some knowledge of biology in the real world to be able to analyze that stuff and make sense of it. Even if we can't scientifically understand it entirely, we can still a lot of times get an idea of whether something actually makes sense or not.
Yeah, I think because when you learn new things, you have to have something, I think, by which to judge it. Like you need to have a good solid foundation so that you can put that somewhere and use it. So also knowing kind of not only how you learn, but what do you know so far
Yeah.
that you can use to therefore learn more and judge by that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Logic, how it builds on itself.
yeah,
And instead of being like some people, like they think it's basically science is about being skeptical or we got to doubt everything. Wrong. Jacked up. No. You know what you know when you got to go from there. It's a matter of being curious and knowing how to learn and knowing what you really know and what you don't and sticking to what you know. It's not doubting everything. But so that's basically what the show's about. All our episodes of the podcast. And of course, things will change as we go along. We'll learn about this podcasting thing, and that's one thing about being objective is when you learn something, if you find it's true, and you find old knowledge contradicts it, you change the old knowledge. So that's one thing I hope comes up in our podcast. I hope we say something, and then later on, we say, "Oh, that was wrong. How stupid. How do we ever believe that?" Because that shows we're objective. You know? It's like people who don't change their mind and who are stick to something and regardless of the facts, do not trust them. Dangerous. But yeah, we'll say Melanie and I, of course, agree on a lot of things. Sometimes she'll be right. Sometimes I'll be right. Sometimes she'll be wrong. Sometimes I'll be wrong. Sometimes we'll both be wrong, thank goodness. And then we get to learn. Because then we both get to learn, not just one person.
That's right.
Yes.
And there's benefit in working with others.
Yes.
And learning from each other, yeah.
But
sure.
So, basic idea, and then what about us? Why the heck are we doing this show? And are we qualified, or are we just a bunch of bozos? Do we even know what we're talking about? So, let's tell everybody a little bit about that we can think of right now about our credentials. Can't do it all, but so what are some of your credentials, Melanie?
Well, let's see.
Where do I start?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I have, the typical paper credentials I got from university and that type of thing. So I could maybe back up and just say what I do a little bit before I do, maybe. I have 3 kids. I homeschool them. I've homeschooled them since they were babies, able to, sit up in the tub and play with little styrofoam letters. So I knew I wanted to be a homeschool mom from before I even had kids. So that is something I do. But I do kind of farm it out now that the older 2 are, they need more. And I don't have a workable knowledge in math and history any more than maybe I don't know what level. Remember, my public school education did not get me prepared for high school math and, college level. So my 2 older ones are now going into to the University of Minnesota.
And then you're busy. You got kids, and you got a life, and you got a job, and you can't take time to really dig into all the math and know how to really know it for one thing, and then really understand it to be able to teach it really well and not just get by. But yeah.
I mean, I have no doubt I could grasp what they're doing, but you were right. There is no time for me to know it better than them and stay ahead of them. So it's just better this way. Because I really enjoy the class at the University of Minnesota, and I can't brag enough about that class. They're both getting super high marks in the class. So, I mean, they're doing really well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have online classes with you for science and a couple other teachers for literature and history. So it's going great. And the other thing I do, I guess I wear a few hats. I also have a private music studio. And that has been going on since I was in high school. I started teaching when I was 16. And I've got like 35 students a week right now, and I teach all these different instruments, but I play them all too, really well. I mean, I play them so I can, always keep in there. I'm fine. I don't have to worry about keeping ahead of my students, but but it's great because that's another kind of learning that's very different than math and that type of thing. It's a performance. So very interesting. Can talk about that later. But so I teach those different instruments. And,
what instruments do you teach besides piano?
Clarinet, flute, saxophone, and a little bit of ukulele.
Yeah.
And that's always fun. It feels like we're in Hawaii. Yeah, so having a studio, though, talk about, then I have to also be a businesswoman. I can't just teach the lesson and hope everybody will pay me and that there's a profit at the end of the day. So I've got to also figure out, the different business angles and things and promotion and marketing. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And I also, if I can finish, I think maybe, I have a philosophy group that I work with. I've had it for 10 years now about.
Cool.
And there's a number of us that get together and discuss philosophy, and it seems like it always kind of gets down to politics, religion, and how do you fund the roads. I mean, it's interesting. So we get together, once a month and just discuss lots of different things, but it's always good to kind of have some idea what your philosophy in life is, and that's kind of a place for people to explore and discover that. So.
Yeah, okay, so what's this philosophy stuff you're talking about? What is philosophy?
What is philosophy? Well, it depends on the philosophy you have.
But what is philosophy in general? Yeah, that is, but...
It's a way of looking at life and living on this earth. I mean, it's a way of thinking of how you're going to get in, work through... Oh, gosh, it's terrible that you're asking me that, and I can't give you a real good answer.
Okay, shall I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want me to jump in? So yeah. I'd say, so in case you couldn't tell, folks, this is Michael, not Melanie. It's Michael talking, okay? In case you couldn't tell from the voice. So, I'll just throw in before Melanie continues. So, I have a degree in philosophy and a degree in math from UT Austin, bachelor's, some of my credentials. I'll say more later. But philosophy is about man's relationship to existence, basically. And the science of philosophy includes sub-branches like politics, morality, aesthetics, epistemology, metaphysics. So philosophy is something every human being has to have to some extent, whether identified explicitly or not. It's like, what is the world like you live in? Is it noble or not? What is a good person? What is a good life? What is art? What is its role in human life? What makes good art? How do I know anything? What's a concept? What's a theory? Should I trust my perceptions or my emotions or an authority or my thoughts or reality or perceptions or like what? So philosophy is a science that answers all those questions. So it's important in everything we do. And it's fundamental to physics and biology and everything. So even though some physicists and scientists want to think that they don't do anything in philosophy or philosophy gets in the way, they're making philosophical statements and it underlies everything they do. And they couldn't live or do their science without it. So what they're doing is not telling the truth. They're just showing a misunderstanding of what philosophy is or how their consciousness really works. But so there's a brief thing about philosophy. We'll be talking about it more in episodes in the future sometime. But so that's what everything Melanie discusses in her philosophy study group. So this piano teacher's really taking it to town and really digging deep, doing all these like coffee and philosophy discussions. Like, it's not just bearded old men that sit around discussing philosophy.
There you go. Yeah. That's right.
So you got the philosophy study group and you've been doing that for 10 years and discussing all that stuff we just talked about and doing piano and clarinet and the saxophone and all this stuff, but the harmonica is too complicated for you?
Harmonica?
It's too advanced? You haven't certified in that yet?
I don't even own a harmonica. I hate to say. Do you own one? Do you have a harmonica?
No, I couldn't play a harmonica.
You could. No, it's not that.
Okay, I could play it, but it wouldn't sound very good. All right, so we got music teacher, philosophy group leader, homeschool mom of 3 accomplished kids. What else?
I love cooking. I mean, just things like that.
Yeah.
I like to play the actual piano. I'm working on a piece I've worked on for years. I'm trying to perfect it. It's a
Cool.
Rachmaninoff piano piece.
Oh yeah.
Just
Big hands, big hands.
I know it, but it's so beautiful. It's like just it's what the piano was made for, in my opinion.
Which Rachmaninoff piece? Which
it's
piece?
The 18th variation from the Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini.
Okay, so people, y'all can look that up.
Yeah,
Maybe
you will love it.
If we make some show notes, we can put a link in the show notes or something.
Yeah, we can do that. And when I finally get it, I'll put it on.
Yeah.
I'll record it.
Rachmaninoff, one of the greatest composers and pianists of all time.
I'm really proud of the fact that my students, they like to compete in the state piano competition, and they win. They get all the way to finals and win.
Good.
And then they get to perform at a final, like an honors concert, which is at a big convention center. And my own kids have done it several times and won a number of times. So I'm very proud of them for all the work they put in. I guide them, but really ultimately they put the hours in sitting there, because learning an instrument is it's very solitary. You are sitting there saying, basically going, what can I do? What can I create here with these 10 fingers? Or, if you're playing an instrument, I guess wind instrument different, but it's so, it's just a difference. And so teaching it, you actually have to know, just getting off on the side a little bit, but you're pulling from somebody, like helping them discover that artistic sort of expression in them. And it's so much fun. It's really fun to do it. And when they actually feel like they've accomplished something, like, the winning a competition, it all comes together. It's really
Yeah. Cool. Is that just city competition or state or regional or what?
The whole state comes together.
Cool.
There's about 5,000 that compete statewide.
Cool.
And it gets down to the last 700. So.
Cool. That's neat.
Mm-hmm.
So what were your degrees in school, college?
Well, music education,
Yeah.
and a lot of credits in piano performance. So I didn't finish that degree quite, but about. So yeah, a lot of music education.
Cool.
And I keep going, back and getting more credits and more classes taken care of. So.
Yeah, good. And then you got music theory test you've passed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Minnesota is they're very good about getting kind of an official theory test for students to take. And there's 8 levels. And the 8th one is very, very tough. It takes a few hours to take it. I'm on level 4. And that, I'm going to work my way through all 8 too, because I should. And I want to. It's really fun knowing what I know about theories. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get perfect scores on every test, right? Little miss. If you get a 98, you got to take it again so you get 100.
Well, I will tell you, I've gotten perfect score on the ones I've taken, except the last one. I got 1 point off. I'm like, no, I'm doing this again. I'm going to get a perfect. I'm going to say I got a perfect score on everything. So
Cool.
Yeah, I'm taking another one in April.
Okay. Good luck.
So, thank you.
April 2018. So, then what else?
Okay.
So, music education really well, music, homeschooling, philosophy, so epistemology gives you deeper insight into how education works and how to teach. Philosophy is about aesthetics, so you appreciate art and piano more. And your kids have accomplished a bit, as you say, at 13 and 15, they're already in some college courses in math.
Yeah.
At a local university, getting credit, right?
Yeah, my son is 15, and he's in college calc, and he's getting a straight 100% pretty much score. Kira, she's 13 and just actually turned 14. She's been almost at 100% and the highest scoring in the class. So yeah, she's doing great.
Good.
And their father has a PhD in math, so there's a little help there too.
Yeah.
It kind of they come by honestly. And then Jack, he's 11. He's not quite there yet, but he wants to try out for this class because you can start when you're in 5th grade, taking the test to see if you can get in. And yeah, I think he could do it next year maybe. So
cool.
All working toward that. Yeah. But they're all great kids because I've tried to raise them very rationally. That's another podcast, but just from the start, just helping them deal with reality, recognize it, identify it, work in it and just never ever kind of sort of shutting our mind off and just like I see a lot of parents, they don't quite understand the nature of kids, but I worked really hard to get that information so that I could work with them in a very rational, kind of scientific way, really, to understand what can I expect of these kids, what's a rational parenting expectation, and then how do I get that from them?
Yeah, a lot of parents, I can imagine, it's hard. There's so much information, they might give up on something, just get tired of it. You don't got time. So it'd be nice if there was something in the culture so more parents could learn that more easily, because I know it can be frustrating. So it's good you've got the time to dig into that and done a good job at that. And the kids are well-rounded. So they also do martial arts and ballet, and
that's right.
They're not just little nerds.
That's the first question people ask when they're when they find out they're homeschooling or being homeschooled. They're like, "Do you have friends?
Yeah.
Do you do things outside of the home?" My answer is always, our trouble is that we can't say no to stuff. We're not sitting doing the classes. I mean, we are, of course, but just I feel like we're always kind of out running around doing all these activities. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
And like what? Didn't Kira and Leo go to some camp last summer?
Last summer, yeah. I mean, Michael and I prepared them, I think Michael more than I, because he knew what it would take to survive for a week at a camp that you never, if you go outside hardly at all, and you go to this camp where you're outside 24/7, and you have to work in nature to figure out like how to grab, get things that you need. And we worked so hard at getting them in shape. It was really funny. But they went last year, last summer.
Camp Managen, and they were gone. They were kind of in a group in the wilderness.
Yeah, just roughing it. You know, they slept on the ground and they had to make a fire to get their food heated up, and
for a whole week.
Yeah, and they really hadn't been away from home much more than a few days.
Yeah, but how many kids now does it even do that at 13 and 15? Some might go camping a little bit or do this and that, but in their like RV or something. But
right, yeah.
How many go in the wilderness, without their parents, and they're alone for a whole week? It's impressive.
Yeah, they had to portage the canoes because it was the canoe trip.
Portage? What does portage mean?
Well, Minnesota has a lot of lakes and a lot of large bodies of water, but you can't always get from one to another without lifting the canoe and literally carrying it to the next body of water. That's called portaging.
So they got to carry a canoe?
They had to carry the canoe plus their backpack, which was full of all the stuff they needed for, a week's survival out in the woods. They had to carry their food and, whatever clothes they could take and stuff. So, yep.
Cool.
It's pretty fun. And they want to go back again for a couple of weeks. So
good, yeah. So
really loved it.
Yeah, they liked it. They want to go back for 2 weeks instead of just a week. Mm-hmm. Cool. So, yeah, that says a lot. Those are good credentials right there. What you've helped your kids do, the people you've gathered around to help educate and motivate your kids. So, any other credentials you want to talk about?
Thank you.
Not now?
I think that's pretty good. Yeah, thanks.
Cool. That was interesting.
Yeah. Well, I would ask you the same question, actually. What have you been up to?
So why am I qualified to do this? All right, so as I've said, I have a bachelor's in math from UT Austin, a bachelor's in philosophy from UT Austin, and that was like decades ago. That was like maybe 2 lifetimes ago of some people listening to this podcast. But less than a lifetime for some people. And I'm certified fitness instructor. I've got level 1 fitness certification by MovNat, M-O-V-N-A-T, a nice organization. Be working on level 2 soon. I've been training for it. Just got to wait till a certification comes up, and I should be able to get it at the weekend certification. It's practical thing. I don't know if we'll do a theory test this time. We did a theory for level 1. I had a paper test, but people who do this have to show they can teach it and show they can do it.
Mm.
And, maybe in some show notes or something, sometime or other, we can put a list of what's involved if people are interested. Because moving out things are really interesting. It's natural movement, so it gives basic fundamentals that every human being should be able to do. And it helps in all sports and everything. It's good to do what we love. If you like playing tennis or sailing or bowling or whatever, we got to remember that as human beings, like it or not, we've got joints and muscles and a nervous system, and we got to make sure we take care of the whole thing so that we can do this specialized sport better and live through whole life. Because the sport is just a recreation, a thing we do in limited time. We still got to be able to deal with friends, move around, drive cars, walk here and there, help in emergencies if we can, all this other stuff. All these things come up in the real world, and we got to be able to be prepared for that. Sit, stand, squat, climb, jump, move around, and move nat. And there's some other folks out there that do some good work like that too. Ido Portal, GMB Fitness in Austin, GBM, I forget exactly. Sorry guys, I'm not perfect. And Primal Play, and other people. Too many to mention, too many I'll remember right now. But I like the moving out thing. It can be indoors, can be outdoors, but it's helped me a whole lot. It's a good basis for anybody who wants to do anything besides the things I talked about. If you're a martial arts, if you're a police officer, firefighter, play football, whatever, this is stuff that should be at the base of what everyone does as a human being. So I'm certified in that and got Texas teacher credentials in secondary math from U of H. So that's like the paper stuff. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything else in there, but so I've tutored and taught for decades and been into fitness and exercise and health for a long time, and really gotten into biology and ecology and the whole biological sciences thing. Done that a lot. It's really important because we're rational animals. We're living things. So we need to know a lot about that. People know a lot about society, their individual field, but we got to make sure that we really know what it is to be a human being. That's our biology. And I've learned a lot about that in the last few years, thanks to folks like a lot of them. Read a lot of books like Aristotle and Darwin and Rob Wolf and Chris Kresser and Dr. Bland and Hyman and all these other people out there do all this good work, and the great Katie Bowman and all these other folks, Nina Teicholz, all these people. A lot of good work, a lot of good thinking. But so that's kind of like my background and paper credentials. But okay, so blah 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 blah. But how does it really matter? Okay, so I've helped people get big increases on their SAT and ACT scores, help some people go from maybe 27 to 28 to 32, 34 on the ACT, help someone out of 1600 on the SAT, help them go from about an 890 to an 1190, help people get $40,000 a year scholarships added on to what they already had. So there's a little bit right there. Help people go from, they're at a really elite private school. They maybe can get a B plus or A on their own, but I help them get maybe an A minus or A instead. Or they might get a C plus or B, and I help them get a B plus, even though they're performing really high already. Help people go from failing to, in math and physics and chemistry, things I tutor. And then, of course, SAT, ACT. But help them go from failing to like a C or like lower grades to A's and B's. You know, I've done a lot of that stuff. A lot of good grades. And that's nice, you know, but I like to do that. That helps. Depends what people know and appreciate and want. But what I really like to do is help people really learn to think and reason. And so here's some stuff that shows how what we are doing, Melanie and I, matters and is real and is not airy-fairy and made-up stuff. So let's say, for example, one kid I worked with since he was like in 7th grade through high school, in a little college, you know, we started working on math, but then we get into math and some science. And since we're doing that, we got to talk about since they're not just focused on just grades and just homework, like some are, they are more interested in learning from me, as much from me as they can and soaking it up. Mm-hmm. And so they're learning about, so I'm able to talk about the nature of math and applying math to things and the nature of science and the nature of physics and how it matters and how we can use it. And that's how things should be more. So because of that, you know, we're digging into that and he's learning a lot. Okay, so then this guy goes to Texas A&M, he gets 2 degrees. He gets a degree in, I think it was genetics and microbiology, if I remember right. But and because of the stuff I taught him, so here he is in this biological science before I'd even studied biology. I don't even know immunology. And he takes this class in immunology. And, you know, it's what I think I heard, it's like the hardest class you take in biology as an undergrad. And so he's in this class doing stuff I've never even taught him, the particular content. But because of the thinking skills he's learned from me, the nature of science, how to do science, logic, epistemology, how to think, he gets 102 in the class. That's the highest grade the teacher had given in her 20-year history teaching that class. That is one thing that shows how what we're doing is valuable and important and serious and fundamental. Not like some people who say, oh, we're doing a revolution in education by doing the same thing everyone else does, but putting it up on video. You know? I don't think so. But,
well, I want to add in there, I've witnessed what you're talking about firsthand with my 3, you know.
Sweet.
I mean, that's really what brought us together, because I needed a science teacher that could do this.
Little did you know what kind of trouble you'd be getting into.
What Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Not at all. No, Michael, you're totally But the thing is, though, that what's so great, and this is what tells me that what you're saying you want to do for people, at least it's worked with my 3, is that we won't even be in your class. And they'll go, Mr. Goldwater said that, you know, this, showed us this, look at, that's true. Like, you know, and things like that. We bring what you're teaching them in the class, trying to get them to think and look at, look at their world and understand it. Because it's knowable. You know, that's part of this whole thing, is just the mind can know things and apply them and integrate. And so It's so great that you're showing them and teaching them this, because in just this one short year, I've seen these guys looking and thinking way differently.
Sweet. Good.
So it was the missing piece, you know, to this hierarchy I've been trying to give them from day one.
Cool.
And you've actually, you've concretized it, but you put a name on it, you explain it to them, and it's just beautiful. So I can definitely
thank you.
Corroborate your story.
Yeah, and that's one thing people need to get. We want to make sure we address. It's not just the content. I think people do that too much. It's how things are done, as you kind of said right there. It's like their thinking has changed. Thinking is a process, it's not a thing. Like some people say, method determines content. You know, you can think about that. So people, what does that mean? This philosophical statement. Well, you take a different animal, the way their consciousness functions determines the content of their consciousness. Yeah. You know? we have certain content in our minds as human beings because we have certain methods. And you can tell, like, if it's the method of a liar, they're going to have certain content in their head, and it's going to be organized in a certain way. If it's the method of a good, rational, objective scientist, it's going to be structured and connected to reality and organized, and it's going to be a lot different. They're going to have different content in their head organized in a different way. The whole of their consciousness and their conceptual structure will be different. But yeah, it's the how that matters, and that's one thing that guy learned from me so he can get a 102 in immunology, how things work, not just the what. I taught him pretty much zero of the what in immunology. It's how he did things that allowed him to be successful in different areas. And then another thing I did, like some people might think, oh, that's just airy-fairy, that's just academic. He did it a 102 in immunology, who cares? That's just college. Okay. When he was in high school, so when we're doing some science, just like Melanie said with her kids, it's a matter of not just memorizing a bunch of stuff. It's a matter of knowing the world and seeing what's important, saying this is important. Yeah. Pay attention to it, value it. If you don't know that yet, then get with it. Or things they already value, connecting to that. This is important to you. This is how you're going to be better at it. And if you want to maybe be a writer, how are you going to be a good writer? Well, you got to learn about the world so you can write about the world. Yeah. You can't be a good writer if you're like totally stupid about people in the world. So things like that. So you got to see how things matter, why it's important, how things work, the cause-effect relationships, the nature of things in the world that we're living in. And so, okay, so it's not just the academic stuff. You want kids when they get older to be able to, as an adult, you want them to be able to make up their own mind, make good decisions, live a good life. So they got to be prepared for that in the methods and the content and the values. So this one kid, when we're doing science, as I say, we're talking about methods as well as content in physics and everything, physics, some chemistry, some math. How does it work? How do you use this? I want to bring up something that matters to him. So I find out he wants to be a vet. So he's interested in pets. So we can talk about cats because he cares about animals. So we start digging into cats and how they should live, how they function, how they should eat, things like that. And we're learning that. And he said he learned about, from me, how to deal with academic research papers in high school. And then he goes to college, and everyone he knows is like clueless about what to do to all this stuff. But he had been doing it for like 2 or 3 years already, and he knew what to do. Because he had already dug into this stuff in high school because of what we had talked about. He's motivated to do stuff on his own. But he's learning about how cats work, how they should eat. And so then I think it was an animal science class in high school, everyone had to do a paper and give a presentation in front of vets. Imagine yourself as like an 11th or 12th grader, and you got these like 40 or 60-year-olds who are like professionals in their profession, and you got to present to them, You'd be like all like traumatized and nervous and freaked out and feel like all inferior. And if they disagree with you, you'd be, yes, sir, I'm sorry,
Yeah, right. Absolutely. That's what you're taught to do.
Yeah. Yeah. But, so this guy, of course, he chose to give a presentation on how cats should eat. And he was thoroughly researched. He knew his stuff. And so he's giving his presentation. And some vet says, no, you're wrong. Because they should eat dry cat food because that's what I learned in college. And then, of course, what does this kid do? He says, no, you're wrong. And he starts busting out all these facts and these research papers. And he shut that vet up. And I think, from what I heard, like second or third hand is like, I think that's the only time the vet had ever been made to like shut up like that. Because this is like a more vociferous person.
Okay.
So it's like, that's what we want to achieve. This kid can think for himself independently and get the right thing to help help something he loves survive. It helps him. It helps a cat. I mean, imagine him later in the future having to help a friend or a family member or a coworker. He can do it. He's got the methods of how to think, and he's got good scientific content, so he can apply that in all different areas of life and help take care of himself and take care of other people. And if that's not what it's about, then nothing matters. You know?
Yep.
So there's one thing I've done, and if that doesn't show the fundamental correctness of what we're saying, of what anybody says, then nothing does. Or, if I read this like testimonial here, let's see. So here's one. This is from someone else, but one kid says, I tutored with the Gold Academy for Physics and Calculus at the end of my senior year of high school in order to prepare myself for my first semester of engineering at Texas A&M University. Not only was I prepared enough to feel comfortable and excel in the coursework my first semester, but Michael introduced me to thinking about problems as a whole and inductively. That's like as a whole, W-H-O-L-E, not a H-O-L-E, like not like throwing everything away. He taught me how to think of everything, problems as a whole. Dump them and forget them. Yeah, like as a whole entire thing. And inductively. And then he says, a thought process which has helped in every form of learning. To this day, 7 years later, I still use this method to help me solve problems and learn and work and in life more effectively. I highly recommend the Gold Academy to anyone looking to not only improve their grades, but also to improve their thinking ability, to problem solve and appreciate learning. That's what it's about. And that's from 7 years after I worked with him.
Wow, that's
great. And that shows the value and legitimacy and fundamentality of what we are doing. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then if we get like, let's see. Throw in a couple others here, maybe. Yes, ma'am? You want a timeout? Okay. Let me pause. All right, there. So we took a break. We've been going for a while. We just stopped and take a break, as you heard. Come on, kitty. Now we get to meet Prince. Podcast. Co-host. We got the two hosts, and we got a host here. Co-host. Prince Kitty. All right. So, as I say, I read one more like testimonial. We got others. Done a lot of good things. A lot of good students. Really taught them to think and taught them the how and why. Not just taught them content that they regurgitate and forget and then never use again in life. But this one here says, prior to working with Michael, excuse me, need some water. Okay, we'll start again. Drink water. All right, start over. Take two. Prior to working with Michael, I had very little hope of actually pursuing my dream to work in the aerospace industry as an engineer. Yet here I am, finishing an engineering degree at A&M this fall and working at Bell Helicopter as an engineer. With Michael's help, I came to understand the importance of not only mathematics, but also reason, rationality, and a constant pursuit of knowledge. I cannot recommend Michael enough for any student of any subject. This guy is simply the best. Sorry to read that, guys. I don't mean to sound arrogant. I'm just reading what someone else says. Don't blame me. I'm just a messenger. That was Drew. He was in his 20s when he did that. I worked with him in junior high school and high school. Did some geometry and some math, some other stuff, long time ago. And worked with him and his brother. Awesome folks. And that's what he had to say. And that just shows, as I say, the value and validity of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how we can have a podcast like this and why we have something we're saying. how it's not like we want to help people. We just want to continue to do what we've already done, right? We know what we're doing, right?
Right, exactly.
So
you said that very well.
Thank you.
And when your students can say it well, that says a lot. I mean,
Truth, yeah. Yeah, so it's not like they're just can't write it very well, but they can express it. They can put it into words. And there are still others that, I haven't talked about or haven't really put up, and some of them will say the same, can say it in really, really good words. Like someone I worked with in statistics a year ago. He's in college now, first year. But he's good and eloquent. Some other people, of course, but so, and then if people want to see, what that and what some of your kids do, we write essays in the science classes, and we haven't done a lot yet, getting into it more, and they've been doing it a lot, but the longer they go, the better their essays will be. But I posted on my blog book review essay that Kira wrote, kind of book review essay about the Wright brothers, a book by, I think, Quentin Reynolds, if I remember right. But that was nice. She did a good job. And they got some others we're working on. Yeah. But so that's what our podcast is about, and then we talked about our credentials. And anything else we need to say about that for now?
Well, I mean, the MoveNet part for you, your certification.
Yeah.
I would say that if anyone wants to just check that out, they could go online for Gold Academy on YouTube and see a lot of stuff that you've made and continue to make. And we've used it a bunch. Like I said, getting the kids ready for that camp, that nature camp where they were carrying canoes and stuff. So you set out just very hierarchically, starting from the beginning all the way up to what you thought they would need at camp, a video for them to work on like for a couple days, and then another one, and we just kept adding on. So I mean, everything you do, Michael, I'm just going to toot your horn for you here, but everything you do is very thought out. It starts at the beginning. You don't skip steps just so you can get to the end. I mean, you insist on that from the kids.
Yeah.
And me, I think, at times, Thank you, but, thanks, right? But anyway, no, it's great. I mean, that's just, it's wonderful. Because how many times do we have someone in our life that we feel like we can be sort of like a colleague or a peer to, but yet you always feel like you're being challenged and the best is brought out, in you, and that you do that with everybody, me, my kids, your students that you've had. And now, even how we approach this, putting together something for other people to learn and have a better life, hopefully, because we feel like our lives are doing well.
Yeah.
Want to show, and you just from the beginning, we got to go, it's all, so all just, it integrates.
Cool.
I don't know
Thanks.
if I'm using that word a lot, but anyway. So I just wanted to say, people can go online, they can see your movement, I mean, you're in great physical shape. So if anybody wants that, start at the beginning and, keep going and just don't quit, don't give up, just keep at it and try out the MoveNet thing. We do that here to a point. I mean, we don't do as much as you, but so anyway.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't try to play Rachmaninoff before you can play the little star or whatever.
I apply that in my studio. Yeah. And sometimes they're like, I don't want to play this again. I'm like, well, then learn
it. Yeah, true. Because in this piece, you got to do this and this and this technique. And if you want to play this piece that you're talking about, you have to be able to do those techniques. In this other piece you want to play, well, you got to do these techniques. So first play this song, and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They even have warm-ups that they have to do well in, because it's not just getting the fingers warmed up. It's teaching them how to be coordinated.
Yeah, true.
If one hand is ahead of the other, Well, when you play a song where they're both supposed to play together, what makes you think that's going to magically all of a sudden work? When you've been training them to play, I have a number of older students, I still don't. But you know what? They get it. They just have to get themselves to do it. But as long as we as teachers and parents hold our kids to that standard, and ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how we can meet those and rise above, and become the best we could have, better than we imagined.
Yeah. And yeah, they got to realize it's not just their hands they're wanting to do something. They got to train and give time to develop their muscles and ligaments and tendons and nervous system and brain. We don't need to know all that technical stuff. You can tell just by looking at people that it takes people and animals. It takes time to train. You just got to realize, okay, well, this is that time it takes to train people in general, and then what's the variation? People always vary in that. But if people want to dig into it, or if they need something like that, then clearly, there's plenty of stuff people can look into about the nervous system nowadays. All the epigenetics and neural networking and synapse firing and electricity and everything. Pardon?
The impact of sleep.
Yeah, true.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's about what our podcast will be about and about us, and you could tell in what we've been discussing, like a bit about where we're coming from and what we want to do. We're about having a rational point of view and a logical point of view in things. And people have different ideas. Okay, well, people throw around the word logic and rational and healthy diet all the time, but mean different things. So, I've got under my belt some study of the history of philosophy and the history of math, and I got that philosophic perspective on it. So I'm just not so limited as some other people might be, just because of, what their life's been, and they got a family. There's certain things they don't know because of the culture. It's not their fault. It's not like it's like evasion or willful, what is it called in law when you do something wrong, willful injury or whatever. I forget the term, but it's no no willful thing like intent to harm, right? Just like I didn't know any better,
Yeah.
I've learned a lot of stuff. Go ahead, what?
Oh, just that it's innocent. It's an innocent mistake or oversight. They don't realize. But once you know, then you have to.
Yeah, like some stuff I know, I've only learned in the past 6 months or 3 or 5 years. So I sure the hell didn't know a lot of the stuff I do now. But thankfully, I do what I do for a living. I'm a teacher, and so it's my responsibility to dig in things like that, and so I have more time to it as opposed to some other people with a certain profession. And then, I don't know, some people they're on the board for some volunteer organizations. They have a job, they have a family, they have only so much time. Can't dig into it as, we can. I can do a lot more because it's my job, and I don't got some of that stuff going on, and it's my interest in everything. Because one thing that's interesting, some things we think we remember when we're younger, we don't, or we remember it because we were told. But I know one thing I remember when I was younger, is that when I was, maybe 5, 6, I remember being on the floor in the living room and watching an electric train go around a track. It was just some little cheap thing, like you getting Tony the Tiger, some little Tony the Tiger train or something. And I wanted to know how it worked. And I asked a relative, and I was just so dissatisfied with the answer. It was like nothing. It was like it just goes around because it goes around. Like, explain this to me. And I know that there are other things too, but I know that's one thing I really remember about striking me as letting me know that there's a method for things in some way. When you're 5, you don't know.
Yeah. But you knew something. You knew it was something.
at some level, or you have some cognitive feeling or something, like something's missing.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't figure out an answer because that takes a genius. No way could I do it. But thankfully, because I've studied philosophy, I've learned a lot from all these giants, and I can stand on their shoulders. But even from then, I know, like, then and before, that's something that has been all through my life. How do you think about things? How does the world work? Not just what is it, but how does it work, and how do we think about it, you know?
Yeah.
That kind of scientific thinking has been an interest all since then.
Well, and your passion is contagious. I mean, like I was saying with the kids, right?
Cool. Yeah, sweet.
I mean, sometimes they are like, wow, he's real. They think you're upset, but it's in fact you're just that you're very passionate about it, and that
Yeah.
they don't hear that from anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
unfortunate.
Yes, that's not true. Their other two teachers that they study most of
True.
are very passionate. I'm not trying to take the thing away, but I'm just saying out in the world, because we have a very, very unique set of instructors that I've set up with the kids here, but Mew being one of them, of course.
Thanks.
But I mean, it's very hard to find people who are passionate about what they do, but knowledgeable and understand why they know and why it's important someone else would know.
Yeah.
And so that's cool. That's
taken a long time.
So cool.
I've only been able to do that in the last like 5 or 10 years. Even before, I was still kicking around and bumping and falling and making mistakes, trying to figure out what the heck was going on. Couldn't be as effective at different things. But, so yeah, it's something, as I say, it's been an interest and a passion all through life, a driving thing, how we think. You know?
Yeah.
But, so that's more what we're at and what we'll be doing in the podcast. You know, we care about how things work, not just what they are. The what is important, of course, not to detract from either one. But, because just like, you know, you can think as well as you want, but if you don't need a healthy diet, well, it's not going to help. The what matters. We need content. And then it comes up in different ways, just like the way you exercise. One reason people get hurt at the gym because they have bad technique. It's not just the weight, the what, or doing a certain exercise. It's got to be with a good technique according to our nature. And that's what we want to talk about. Like in the podcast, we want to take the point, you know, we're coming from the perspective of human beings as rational animals and how we should live and how biology works. And yeah, then like we want to be, I mean, you, me, everyone, through like decades, what do people ask, like in math and stuff? When are we ever going to use this? Why is it important? Will you explain this? You know, that's what we want to do. That's been going on for decades and still is. It's a cliche. Everybody knows that. But in this podcast, people will get the answer. It is no longer a question. Explaining things, knowing why it's true, why it matters, that's what we're about. Why does it matter to us as people? So we can survive and thrive. It's good for us, for ourselves, friends, family, the culture in general. Make a better culture, it's good for us, you know? But, yeah, we want to be like logical and scientific about things, but more like the Greeks. Like some philosophers pointed out, in the Renaissance they were rational, but it was kind of like a valueless rationality, whereas the Greeks had a passionate rationality. You know, they loved life and they wanted to know things so they could live better. And that's more what we're about. You have anything to add on that, Melody? What do you think? Like, is that a good description?
I would definitely say it's true. Because isn't it really, everybody wants to have the best life they can, right?
Yeah.
But if your mind isn't working in your favor, well, you've got to figure that out. And I'd say that you've got a really good insight for them to use that they can do that.
So we got to have like some of the right things people know. Eat healthy, move. You got to do this and that. Have friends. Have some success in life. But it's how you do things that matters and how we think fundamentally. We got to take time out to make sure we're thinking logically and well, and knowing how things come into play. And of course, by logic, we don't mean like Spock. Like, Spock is fundamentally illogical. I should make a video about that. Because, logic is about connecting ideas to reality and knowing the nature of things. And in order to be logical, he denies his own nature. I mean, it's a fictional character. They can do whatever they want with it, It's fine. It's a fictional character to have this thing, to play along. You can do whatever you want. But as long as he's not understood as an actual logical person or an epitome of logic, because he's not. He's irrational and illogical because he denies his own nature. He knows he is emotion, yet he denies that. He works against it. He contradicts it. So that is fundamentally illogical. Logic is about knowing the essence of things and the nature of them, connecting your ideas to reality, and he is not doing that. So as human beings, we don't, to be logical, it doesn't mean you're not emotional or you don't enjoy life or anything like that. It's knowing what the different aspects of our consciousness are in our mind and living like a human being. Logic is a tool of survival. We're not little rational atoms floating around or something like that. We're rational animals, We're not brains in a vat. We're not like rational ghosts or something, Rational robots.
Yeah.
We got to live like the animals we are.
Yeah, that could be a whole podcast on, emotion
True.
and thought. That would be interesting too.
Many podcasts.
Yeah.
But so that's our basic point of view coming at. We're rational animals. We have a certain nature. And we learn that by studying biology and evolution and ecology. And we got to know philosophy. And then, we want to become better thinkers and be educated so we can survive and thrive and help ourselves and help other people. Make the culture better. But so should we wrap up? Is that good for today?
Yeah, just an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was great.
All right. So thanks for listening, folks. Melanie, do you have anything to add? You want to say thanks? Say bye.
Well, I'm glad we're doing this, and if anything, it always helps too to help your own life if you kind of know what you're doing, concretize it, think about it, talk about it. So yeah, I'm glad we're doing this. It's great.
Yeah, it's been good discussion.
Yeah.
But all right, pardon?
More to come.
Yeah, more to come. Many episodes with guests, with Melanie and I discussing things, issues and topics in education. But if you have any comments or questions, let us know. Even if they're critical, I don't care. Just like Diogenes said, a Greek philosopher. I don't agree with everything he said, but he did have this good quote. I don't remember exactly, but he said, dogs bark at their enemies, or dogs bite their enemies. I bite my friends to help them.
Ouch.
Yeah, you get the idea.
For sure.
But because sometimes, it's like if someone doesn't criticize you, they're not a friend. That's what friends should do. Not just be yes people and agree with whatever you do, but help you out, correct you when you're wrong, encourage you when you're right, encourage you to become better and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, cool. So, we'll end it here.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, folks. All our one listener. We have one listener.
Far. Hey, so far.
All right. So, y'all have a good one out there, everyone. Be the best rational animal you can be. Survive and thrive, man. Survive and thrive.
Peace.
Bye.